my feeling of the totalitarian leads me to my next point. I'm sometimes grouped with a tendency or faction, I don't know quite how to call it. It's an informal assembly of people, anyway, called the New Atheists. There's nothing particularly new about what we say. The inclusion of myself in this list of names is exorbitantly flattering to myself, because Professors Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett and Dr. Samuel Harris are respectively very renowned biologists, philosophers, neurologists, philosophers of science, and so forth. I'm a mere Ingersollian amateur in this, and if there weren't four of us, we wouldn't be called the Four Horsemen, because you know what cliche is like. But I will, in the time that's remaining to me, because I want to divide our time in such a way as that I still do most of the talking, but that we have a Q&A session. I just thought I'd say what the challenges to this totalitarian worldview are, what I've learned from the recent advances in scientific endeavor, that it seemed to me make the claim of religion to be unassailable and uncriticizable, both laughable and sinister. Every second I've been speaking, every single second, and every second since the first moments of the Big Bang, every second, mark you, your brain isn't big enough really for this, but you can try. Neither is mine big enough. You can try. A sun, a star like ours, blows up. That's the way it is. That's the way it's always been. And so that's quite a lot of suns gone while I've just been driveling on here. How this goes with an argument from design, I'm never quite sure. But let's localize it a bit. That's too much for any of us to really speculate about. We can localize it a little bit. When Edwin Hubble, I owe this point to Lawrence Krauss, I think is the best physicist currently writing on these matters. It used to be thought, yes, we can detect the Big Bang from the red light shift. We can see it. It's still going on around us. But surely the rate of the expansion of the universe from this original amazing explosion will slow down. Newtonianism seems to suggest it. It'll go on flying away from itself, but the rate will decrease. Well, Edwin Hubble first pointed out that it was increasing. But then it was thought, well, even so it'll slow down. And Lawrence Krauss, well, no, it's actually the rate is accelerating still. So that we're quite lucky to have taken the bearings on the cosmos that we have done in the last few decades. If we'd waited another few tens of thousands of years, probably the evidence wouldn't have been so easy to see. It's moving apart so fast. And those of you interested in global warming may be intrigued to know that the luminosity of the sun is increasing at a very rapid rate meanwhile, and that in measurable time the surface of the world, whatever we do about it, will become the same temperature as Venus now is. And there are physicists actually working on the possibility of moving Earth into a different orbit. I don't joke. This is a serious conversation. Because otherwise we're surely done for. So, of course, the religious people are right in saying that everything proves they were right all along, because, yes, the end of the world is at hand. And if you look in the night sky, you can see the Andromeda galaxy heading towards us. It's absolutely on collision course for our galaxy. But our sun will have swollen up, and our Earth will have boiled up and dried and gone to a crisp long before that happens. So you can scratch that from your list of New Year things to worry about. But am I alone in thinking that if we'd known all of this when it was first proposed to us, that God had intervened in Palestine 2,000 years ago, if we'd been the possessors of this information then, we wouldn't have been quite so impressed by it. I'll put it another way, just moving to our little suburb, our species has been on the planet for, let's say, at least 100,000 years. Some people say 150. There's a dispute. Francis Collins, the great Christian scientist, scientific Christian, I'm sorry, he's not a Christian scientist. Christian who's also a scientist who did the Human Genome Project reckons at least 100,000 years. I'll give him that. Don't need any more. So we have to picture this. For 100,000 years, the human species is alive. 99.8% of all other species have died, that ever were on the planet, died, gone, leaving no descendants, extinct. Our species makes a late appearance in Africa, very nearly gets wiped out then, manages to expand. 100,000 years of struggle and fear. Life expectancy, perhaps 25 years, dying of their teeth, terrified of comets, volcanoes, tsunamis, storms, eclipses, no idea of what's happening, no germ theory of disease, and added to that, endless war with other human tribes. Pretty grim, a lot of suffering, a lot of misery, a lot of ignorance, a lot of terror. But heaven, the creator, manages to look with folded arms. They don't seem to be doing that well. Gee, I'm glad I'm not one of them. Especially not her. Dying in childbirth, that epoch would not be pretty. It shouldn't happen to anybody. The kid will die too. But then, a change of plan around 3,000 years ago. After 97,000 years, let's call it, of indifference, time to intervene. But not in, where shall we show ourselves? Well, not in China. They can read there. They've actually managed to do quite a lot better than most of the other primates. No, not China. Not the Indus Valley. Not even Mesopotamia, where quite a lot is going on. They've learned to brew beer for us, just to dull the pain of God's attention. No, in the most Stone Age horror show, the most terrified, ignorant, illiterate peasantry of the lot, we'll show ourselves to them. Now, I submit that if you'd known anything about ethnology and anthropology before these myths began to circulate, there isn't a chance of them being accepted. Once you reverse engineer it, which they would like to do in reverse, they say, now we know about Darwin, we think God is even cleverer than we used to say when we thought Darwin should be banned. Because evolution just shows how clever God is after all. Same with the Big Bang. No, you can't take it back having pretended it wasn't there or having tried to ban its teaching. But suppose you don't do reverse engineering, you enlighten yourself about the past. What chance is there of accepting the Bethlehem myth, or the idea that a 6th century, Arab illiterate merchant receives instructions from the Archangel Gabriel, which cannot later be challenged, or that Moses can part water to lead his stricken people to the one part of the Middle East where there's no oil. Well chosen. I submit in all seriousness that if we had known any of these things, and we haven't known all of them for very long, and some of them we haven't known at all, have only discovered in the last 150 or so years, it would be quite impossible for anyone to come to your door and say, have you heard the good news about, as it might be, Joseph Smith, fastest growing Christian religion in the world, an outright, abject, obvious fraud and racket. So I asked someone to show me when I've gone too far, but if no one has... I sometimes also think if you ever worry you've gone too far, it means you haven't yet gone far enough. If you hadn't got my main point by now, I have a feeling you might not be going to get it. So, in the light of this, it seems to me sinister, as I said, and laughable, as I also said, to allow the claims of religion as metaphysics. I mean, or to respect them metaphysically. I mean, a great man, Stephen Jay Gould, who I'm sure many of you have read, one of the great evolutionary biologists, proposed a compromise in the same way as T.H. Huxley, Darwin's great deputy in debate, proposed a compromise. T.H. Huxley, who I very much admired in his debate with Bishop Wilberforce in Oxford, did for Europe what the later debate between William Jennings Bryan and H.L. Mencken and Clarence Darrow did in the Tennessee Scopes trial 50 years later, and simply laid low the church's belief that God had put the fossils in the rocks to test our faith and so forth. But did propose the compromise of the word agnostic. It comes from Huxley, as to those who can't decide or feel that one should remain undecided. In something of the same way, Stephen Jay Gould used to say that before his much too early, regrettable death, that religion and science were non-overlapping magisteria, as he did it. I don't think this kind of compromise is really any longer thinkable. To say you are an agnostic is to say that you have no belief. Not that you are an atheist, but you have no belief in God. If you have no belief in God, then you might as well say that that's what you don't have. It seems to be cowardly to lurk to say, well, it could be true, but I just don't know. If you don't know, the religious will tell you, you don't believe. And they're right, I think, to be strict on the point. Of those of little faith, they have no patience, and neither do I. On the possibility that the magisteria could overlap, I think I've done, as a real amateur, as someone who is terrified at the thought of my scientific colleagues listening to my puerile explanation of the extraordinary work that they've done, and that the extrapolations I've made, partly with their permission, from it isn't really possible. If you had known all the things I was talking about, you cannot no longer believe that the world, or its design, or its humanity, or its speciation, its amazing, actually rather beautiful, actually rather miraculous reality is compatible with the supernatural or the superstitious. Everything we're made of, cheer up, we're not just materialists here, everything we're made of is stardust. You don't have to despair and become a bored old morose materialist. You still have irony. You still have music, love, sex, landscape, Chinese food, philosophy, which is much more consoling than mere incantation. And you still have the sense of wonder that comes from the extraordinary beauty and symmetry of the universe, and the wonderful kinship that we're beginning to find out that we also have through our genome with other creatures. And by the way, the interesting responsibilities and reflections that arise from knowing that we're made out of the same material. But for the idea that we are not allowed to know any of this without divine permission, that it only comes to us as a gift, that we are mere passive recipients of wisdom, and that without submission to this celestial dictatorship, we wouldn't even know how to behave well to one another. I think it's time to go a bit beyond ridicule and beyond indignation, and to say very staunchly that we will resist that, and that we will enforce and protect our Constitution and its patrolling of the frontier between church and state, and its liberty of conscience, and its long record of people who've been willing to die to uphold that, as I try and put it, Mr. Jefferson, on that wall of separation, build up that wall. And to reply to reply to those who want to bring their ideologies of medieval cruelty and stupidity at gunpoint and with violence into our own homes, into our civil aviation. No, we will resist, we will fight you, and don't get this wrong. We too have real principles and unalterable convictions, and these we will maintain. Thank you. Well, now, you might think it's invidious that I get to pick, to weed the questions, but at least it means I haven't planted anyone in the audience. And I can also get rid of the boring and mad ones. Actually, why would I do that? It's an argument about religion. Okay, well, you've been very sparing, ladies and gentlemen, or someone's weeded them before. I will just take them in order. Which is more satisfying? Writing about politics or writing about literature? Emphatically the latter, partly because, and it goes to the point I was trying to make before, I don't think that morality and ethics are to be found in the holy books, partly because in those books so many things are recommended that are wicked, evil. It's not that you have to rely for your own morality on a god figure. That would be bad enough, abject enough. It's that if you do accept the instructions, then Moses will tell you to go and destroy all the children of the neighboring tribe. For example, take their land, enslave their women for purposes better imagined than described, and so forth, or to mutilate your children, or to immolate, or to burn witches, for example. I mean, all of these injunctions, divine injunctions, are in the books, whereas if you read George Eliot, for example, in particular, I think, Middlemarch, Felix Holt, Mill on the Floss, there's more, and some of her translations of German philosophy into English, there's a great deal more reflection, hard but enlightening and encouraging, of a humanistic kind, to be found in the contemplation of that. And bear this in mind for the education of your children, than there is in the scrutiny of severe, ancient, contradictory Stone Age texts. So one of the reasons I think why it's much more interesting to debate Dostoevsky than it is Leviticus, for example, does proceed from the study of literature. Of course, it should be said that religion gave us our first texts and accustomed us to textual criticism, and that's to its credit in a way. We owe them that much, but it's regrettable that very often they say those texts aren't really available for anything but repetition. They're not to be scrutinized, they're not to be unpacked. Literature doesn't subject you to that terrible inhibition. So I'd far rather be writing about literature than about politics, but politics won't leave me alone. Or you, either. I mean, by the end of the last century, I'd increasingly tried to move away from writing political polemics. I was trying to write a book about Marcel Proust, if that doesn't make you laugh. But always in my mind was the realization that my friend Salman Rushdie had told me one day, a few years before, he thought it would be interesting to write a book that took Holy Writ as if it was literary text, and in particular to examine those very odd verses of the Quran that Muslims say are so wrong that they must have been dictated not by the archangel but by the devil, the so-called satanic verses. How interesting it would be to write a novel on that theme. Yeah, well, so it proved. And it's a regrettable fact, but it's the case that that novel, though it and its author did survive a huge campaign of defamation and violence, no publisher would now publish a novel along those lines by any other author, even someone as eminent as Salman. And we all now live in the climate of self-censorship, exemplified by the Danish case and others, that's been imposed on us. And that's not just a literary question, but also a political one. So anyway, to the extent that the distinction can be made, give me literature every time. What do you think of the question on the front of last month's Atlantic Monthly? There's more. Did Christianity cause the crash? No. Capitalism caused the crash. why did you send your children to Quaker school? My youngest daughter goes to school at Sidwell Friends.